What if the scandal wasn't a mistake? It was the plan. When every safeguard fails and silence becomes the real threat, one counterintuitive truth will change how you see corporate culture forever. Let's find out. We trust massive corporations with our money, our private data, and our livelihoods. But what happens when the people running them break the rules? What is the truth about conduct, culture, and human risk?
The reality is far darker than the glossy corporate brochures suggest. Behind pristine compliance scores and mandatory training modules lies a hidden, volatile ecosystem of human behavior that defies every standard rulebook and exposes us all to catastrophic danger.
Every year, massive corporations pour billions of dollars into mandatory compliance training for their workforce. Yet massive corporate scandals continue to dominate the headlines. Why invest so heavily in a system that repeatedly fails to prevent disaster?
It provides a comforting illusion of control. The primary goal of these endless digital modules isn't to fundamentally change human behavior, but to build a robust legal shield. It protects the corporation's liability, rather than protecting the public from actual harm.
We sit through hours of online modules, clicking next to prove we understand the ethical boundaries. But does this standard corporate compliance training actually succeed in changing how humans behave under intense pressure?
Decades of empirical data shout a resounding no. A landmark 2016 task force concluded that 30 years of corporate sexual harassment training completely failed to prevent workplace harassment. Even worse, a staggering 87% of employees indicate their workplace lacks a strong ethical culture.
If these mandatory ethics modules are universally despised and statistically ineffective, what is the actual psychological consequence of forcing them onto millions of employees year after year?
It triggers a documented psychological backlash. When employees feel patronized or unfairly scrutinized by generic training, they often subconsciously rebel. This deep resentment subtly reinforces the exact toxic behaviors and ethical shortcuts the programs were originally designed to eradicate.
If the compliance manuals are heavily distributed but widely ignored, who is actually committing the fraud? Are these isolated bad apples, or is there a specific pattern to the people breaking the rules?
The most dangerous offenders are often celebrated. Behavioral science reveals a terrifying contagion effect. Simply working next to a highly profitable star employee who bends the rules makes you significantly more likely to commit workplace deviance yourself. If leadership knows that a single toxic high performer can infect an entire department with bad behavior, why do they look the other way? Why are these specific individuals allowed to operate above the law?
It all comes down to the bottom line. Corporations routinely shield their highest earners from standard compliance rules. By creating a protected class of untouchable rainmakers, leadership willingly trades long-term ethical stability for massive short-term financial gain. When the average worker watches a star executive break the rules and receive a massive bonus, how does that blatant hypocrisy ripple through the rest of the corporate hierarchy?
It breeds a devastating, deep-rooted cynicism. When employees realize the rules only apply to the bottom tier, ethical boundaries evaporate entirely. The workplace rapidly devolves into a culture of fear, where systemic fraud becomes the only logical way to survive.
Over a span of 14 years, Wells Fargo employees opened roughly 2 million unauthorized bank and credit card accounts. How could auditors and executives possibly miss fraud on such a massive, unprecedented scale? They didn't miss it. They engineered it. Leadership implemented the 8 is Great initiative, demanding extreme, impossible sales quotas from their staff. The systemic fraud wasn't a glitch in the system. It was the exact behavior the corporate incentive structure demanded.
As the staggering reality of millions of fake accounts became undeniable to the public, how did Wells Fargo's top executives react to the crisis they had created? Who ultimately took the blame?
Leadership ruthlessly scapegoated the bottom rung. Between 2002 and 2016, they fired 5,300 low-level employees, absurdly labeling each case as an isolated incident. Meanwhile, the executives who designed the toxic quotas walked away with multi-million-dollar bonuses.
With thousands of people participating in this massive deception, did anyone try to stop it? Did any brave employees utilize the very compliance tools designed to report corporate misconduct?
Yes, they did.
Dozens of desperate employees did exactly what their compliance training instructed them to do. They picked up the phone and called the confidential internal ethics hotline to report the creation of the fake accounts to management.
When these whistleblowers bravely reported the systemic fraud to the Wells Fargo ethics hotline, expecting protection and intervention, what was the actual result of their loyalty? They were systematically tracked down and fired. The confidential hotline wasn't a safety net. It functioned as an early warning system for corrupt managers to eliminate dissenters. The company violently silenced the very people trying to save it. We might desperately want to believe that Wells Fargo was uniquely evil. But is this brutal retaliation against employees who report misconduct an isolated tragedy or a standard corporate practice?
It is a terrifying global standard. According to the 2023 Ethics and Compliance Initiative survey, a staggering 46% of all employees who report corporate misconduct experience severe retaliation. Speaking the truth is statistically one of the most dangerous career moves you can make.
If nearly half of all employees are too terrified to speak up, how do traditional risk managers and corporate auditors determine if a company is culturally healthy and safe for investment?
They historically look in the exact wrong places. Traditional auditors seek out flawless compliance training records and a pristine HR dashboard. They falsely believe that a quiet company, devoid of internal friction and complaints, is a perfectly managed company.
To a traditional auditor, a dashboard showing 0 workplace complaints looks like an absolute victory. But what does total silence actually indicate about the hidden reality of a corporate environment?
0 complaints is the ultimate red flag. Modern risk analysts know that in any large group of human beings, friction is inevitable. Total silence doesn't mean the culture is perfect. It means the culture is paralyzed by absolute fear.
If a quiet, complaint-free office is actually a toxic nightmare, what are the true indicators of a safe, ethical, and thriving corporate culture?
A healthy culture looks surprisingly messy. It is vocal, dynamic, and full of friction. The 2024 NAVEX benchmark report established that a healthy global organization actually generates a median of 1.57 whistleblower reports per 100 employees, proving that people feel safe speaking up.
Corporate lawyers are terrified of paper trails. Doesn't encouraging a high volume of internal HR complaints and whistleblower reports inevitably provide ammunition for devastating external lawsuits?
The data proves the exact opposite. A massive analysis of 1.2 million reports found that companies with higher internal reporting actually face 6.9% fewer external lawsuits. When employees feel heard internally, they don't feel the need to hire an outside attorney.
Realizing that standard training fails and absolute silence is deadly, how are modern corporations attempting to solve the incredibly complex puzzle of conduct, culture, and human risk?
They are turning to the ultimate technological hammer: artificial intelligence. Corporations are rapidly abandoning passive compliance modules in favor of active, predictive AI surveillance systems designed to monitor employee behavior and sentiment in real time.
Can an algorithm actually peer into the human mind? Can artificial intelligence genuinely predict fraud, harassment, or toxic behavior before an employee even commits the act?
Yes, with unnerving accuracy. By aggressively analyzing millions of emails, private messages, keystrokes, and even biometric data points, AI models can detect subtle shifts in sentiment and flag behavioral anomalies weeks before a massive compliance failure actually occurs.
If artificial intelligence can successfully stop the next multi-billion-dollar Wells Fargo scandal before it starts, what could possibly be the downside to implementing this omniscient corporate oversight?
It introduces a dangerous new frontier of algorithmic bias. When a machine decides who looks like a fraudster based on historically flawed data, innocent employees are targeted. This creates a deeply oppressive atmosphere of constant, inescapable surveillance paranoia.
When employees know that every keystroke, every hesitation, and every private message is being actively analyzed by a predictive algorithm, what happens to their fundamental trust in the organization?
It destroys it completely. Instead of fostering an open culture where people feel safe reporting issues, extreme surveillance drives the workforce into hiding. The true human risks don't disappear. They just move deeper underground,
cloaked in encrypted silence.
We've seen that standard training fails, absolute silence is deadly, and algorithmic monitoring creates a dystopia. So looking at all the evidence, what is the ultimate truth about conduct, culture, and human risk?
Surprisingly, a high volume of whistleblower complaints is actually the strongest indicator of a healthy corporate culture, correlating with 20% lower settlement payouts. When auditors and risk managers hunt for organizational misconduct, they often look in the wrong places, relying on flawless training records that mask systemic, incentive-driven fraud. Today, while AI offers unprecedented tools to predict human risk and detect toxic behavior, it introduces a dangerous new frontier of algorithmic bias and surveillance paranoia that threatens to destroy employee trust entirely.
As artificial intelligence continues to evolve and corporate pressures mount, how do we navigate this treacherous landscape? How do we build organizations that actually survive this new era of human risk?
We must learn to embrace the noise. True ethical culture isn't found in a quiet dashboard or a predictive algorithm. It is found in the messy, loud, and protected voices of the workforce. We must stop hunting for perfect silence and start listening to the humans.
We started by asking conduct, culture, and human risk. And the answer? Surprisingly, a high volume of whistleblower complaints is actually the strongest indicator of a healthy corporate culture, correlating with 20% lower settlement payouts. When auditors and risk managers hunt for organizational misconduct, they often look in the wrong places, relying on flawless training records that mask systemic, incentive-driven fraud. If this changed how you see things, share it with someone who needs to hear it.